This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening and welcome to the March 5th, 2025 South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners meeting. I call this meeting to order. We have all commissioners present tonight. At this time, I would ask you all to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to announce that all public sessions of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners are electronically recorded, filed, and posted to the Township website for public access. At this time, I would ask our Township Manager, Tom Petrucci, to please review our public virtual meeting rules.
Thank you. The public virtual meeting rules are as follows. Courtesy of the floor for non-agenda items will be at the beginning and end of the agenda. Public comment will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. For all listed agenda items, the board president will call for courtesy of the floor prior to the Board of Commissioners taking action on that specific agenda item. For in-person attendees, please raise your hand to be recognized, then move to the podium when directed. You will be asked to state your name and address for the record and may then proceed with asking your question. For those participating virtually, please mute your microphone or telephone to avoid any background noise that may cause interference during the meeting. The chat box feature will be active throughout the meeting. If you have a comment or question, please type your full name and address into the chat box. The staff member monitoring GoToMeeting will then unmute your microphone and you will have the opportunity to comment or ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I'd also like to announce the Board of Commissioners did meet in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss legal and personnel matters. Agenda item 3D, I would like to ask everyone present tonight to please observe a moment of silence for Mr. Ralph H. Uff, who served for over 37 years as a volunteer firefighter who passed away on Sunday, February 23rd, 2025. Mr. Uff also served as the South Whitehall Township plumbing inspector for many years. Mr. Uff was 91. Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Agenda item 4 is courtesy of the floor. This is opportunity for any member of the public to address the board on any non-agenda items. Is there anyone present this evening who would like to address the board? Is there anyone online for public comment? Very good. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 5, presentations. We have our January 2025 financial review year to date, and I'll ask Township Manager Tom Petrucci to present.
Thank you. So at this point in the year, these figures are only as of January 2025. So you'll note that we look significantly under budget in terms of revenue projections and expenses to date. That's because we've only incurred 1 month of the fiscal year. Basically, at this point, I just would like to ask if there's any questions. Otherwise, just to accept the report as presented.
Very good, Tom. Thank you to our finance staff for preparing. Does the board have any comments or questions? Is there any public comment? Hearing and seeing none, thank you again to our financial staff for the report. Agenda item 6 is meeting minutes from the February 19th, 2025 Board of Commissioners meeting. They were distributed in advance. Does the board have any comments? I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Agenda item 7, ordinances. 7A, we have an ordinance of the Township of South Whitehall, County of Lehigh, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, amending Part 1, Administrative Legislation, Chapter 58, Pension Plans, Article 5, Public Works, Union Employees Pension Plan of the Codified Ordinances of South Whitehall Township at Section 58-45 Definitions to revise the definition of qualified employee, amending Section 58-47 Participation B, new participants, to confirm that all employees hired on or after January 1st, 2017 are not considered qualified employees, repealer, severability, and an effective date. And Tom, if you'd please present.
Thank you. So the ordinance for the Public Works Union Employees Pension Plan is not currently consistent with the collective bargaining agreement between the Township and the Teamsters Local 773 Public Works Union. So the ordinance itself is the governing document for the plan. So any Public Works employees hired on or after January 1st, 2017 do not receive the defined benefit plan. They receive the defined contribution plan. So what this does is the ordinance amends the provisions to confirm that an employee hired on or after January 1st, 2017 is not considered a qualified employee, and confirms that new participants would receive the defined contribution plan. So this is more of an administrative item, cleaning up the language in the governing document. The ordinance was advertised in the February 13th, 2025 issue of the Parkland Press for the required public notice. So if the board is so inclined, the ordinance is ready to be adopted.
Very good, Tom. Thank you. This has been before the board prior for our consideration for advertising. Does the board have any questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Are there any online comments? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt said ordinance? Second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to resolutions, agenda item 8A, we have a resolution appointing Frank J.C. Lombardo to the position of Chief of Police for South Whitehall Township. Again, I'll ask Tom Petrucci to please present.
Thank you. So in the fall of 2024, South Whitehall Township engaged Aspirant Consulting Group to assist with an executive search for the position of Chief of Police, with applications due on or before November 29th, 2024. The Board of Commissioners, with the assistance of Aspirant Consulting Group, conducted an extensive recruitment process and interviewed numerous candidates to fill the position. Following the process, the governing body has determined that Frank J.C. Lombardo should be appointed to the position of Chief of Police. As Chief of Police, Mr. Lombardo will be responsible for the organization, planning, budgeting, grant preparation, and administration, staffing, and performance of the South Whitehall Township Police Department and its officers and employees. A graduate of the FBI National Academy, Mr. Lombardo holds a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Planning and Design from Rutgers University, a Master of Administrative Science from Farley Dickinson University, and a Doctor of Education in Human and Organizational Learning from George Washington University. Mr. Lombardo was an officer with the South Brunswick Police Department from 1995 to 2024 and held various leadership positions, retiring as a captain. Mr. Lombardo possesses extensive experience in community services, operations, and administrative functions. So before you this evening is a resolution to appoint Mr. Lombardo to the position of Chief of Police, subject to the conditional offer employment letter.
Very good. Thank you very much, Tom, for that introduction. I'd like to thank our community for your patience as the board worked through this process to select the police chief. As with all personnel matters, the search process and interviews were conducted with the utmost confidentiality. I commend my fellow board members and our township manager for your professionalism, discretion, and dedication throughout the process. The position of police chief is highly visible and carries significant responsibility for community safety, law enforcement, and public trust. This selection process is one of the most critical and impactful decisions that this board will make. We conducted a thorough, comprehensive search to identify the ideal candidate, which resulted in the township receiving 40 highly qualified applicants, which I believe is a true testament to the outstanding reputation of our township's police department. Each candidate was evaluated impartially based on their critical thinking skills, communication abilities, experience, and overall merit and achievements. We are confident that we have selected the most qualified individual to lead our police chief. Throughout the interview process, I found Frank to be not only highly professional and exceptionally knowledgeable, but also approachable, humble, and visionary. His 28 years of dedicated service in law enforcement demonstrate a profound commitment to both the profession and the community he served. Frank, you are joining a dedicated team of 43 officers who serve our township with professionalism, respect, and a strong commitment to community policing. They are actively engaged with our residents, and we have full confidence that you will lead them with distinction, further strengthening the relationship between our police department and the community. To our officers and the community, Frank is a collaborative leader who is committed to supporting you. He has expressed a strong desire to work closely with each officer to help you succeed and to foster continued growth for the department. Frank will uphold our department's commitment to excellence in law enforcement and stay true to the core values and mission of the police department. We are confident he will be a source of encouragement and strength for each of you. And to our township first responders and neighboring public safety agencies, Frank is committed to building strong, lasting partnerships with each of you. Our township has a proud history of volunteerism, and we're confident that Frank will work to strengthen the relationships between agencies, benefiting both our first responders and the community as a whole. In closing, our board would like to publicly acknowledge the invaluable contributions of Interim Chief Steve Brown. Steve, you are a key member of our police leadership team, and we extend our heartfelt gratitude for your dedication, graciousness, and service. At this time, I'll open up the floor to any board members who would like to comment.
Thanks, Chief. We're acting for the chief all this time. I thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to add on to the comments made by Commissioners Kelly and Johns. Frank, congratulations. Throughout this process, I have repeatedly emphasized that after hiring the township manager, selecting the chief of police is perhaps the most important job that this board has. And although I've only known you for a couple of months at this point, I really would venture to guess that bringing you on board as chief at this moment will turn out to be one of the most consequential decisions that this board has ever made, because it will pay dividends for the department and the community for decades to come. Throughout the interview process, I was struck by your strong commitment to your values, your sense of integrity, your intellect, your experience, your desire to build relationships with others, and your humbleness. It's no secret that you come from another department in a different state and a different community. But throughout the interview process, your knowledge of South Whitehall Township, your knowledge of the challenges we face, and your ability to prospectively estimate and assess the challenges that this community will face years from now really shone through. And I think it's a testament to your education and your experience that you were able to identify those challenges so readily. One of the best qualities I think that you exhibited throughout this process was your passion for supporting other officers, not just throughout your career, but also as you transition into this role as chief in South Whitehall. From our junior most patrol officer to our excellent command staff, you've demonstrated a desire to help them grow, to always provide them with the resources they need and advocate for those resources, and to mold them into the present and future leaders in this department that they already are. Your unique and varied education, your focus on building legitimacy and trust in the community did not go unnoticed as well. Of course, your desire to build relationships outside of this building with the school district, with key stakeholders, with other departments, with county agencies, areas in which many of our officers and command staff are already leaders, but adding your voice to that chorus as well, and to become not only a leader in South Whitehall, but a leader in the region for law enforcement. And most importantly, your loyalty to the institution of law enforcement. Almost 3 decades with one department in South Brunswick, which earned you countless commendations and pristine recommendations by your colleagues across the board. That speaks more to your character than any of us really ever could. So for those reasons, Frank, and many more, you're the man for this moment. You have earned this. So I consider it a great honor to welcome you and your family, not just to the police department, but to the greater South Whitehall Township community. We are blessed to have you, and we wish you nothing but the best as you embark on this new journey as the police chief here in South Whitehall Township. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's my turn. I first want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our interim chief, Steve Brown. You provided stability throughout this transition and throughout this process. I am grateful to that. Also, a heartfelt thank you to our police department and our community for their understanding and their patience. Patience has prevailed in South Whitehall Township. Frank, you've received immense support from your colleagues and your peers. For me, there were many strengths and attributes that stood out. Your leadership qualities, your education, your experience, your willingness to travel in inclement weather for an interview. You expressed a deep respect for not only our police, but our fire, EMS staff, and the entire community. You invested time and energy to visit our township and identified problematic traffic areas and even provided some solutions and thoughts for them. And you also provided a very thoughtful 5-year plan based on community trust. You spoke of being a servant leader and how when it gets promoted, it's not just about that person anymore. You're willing to uproot your family and life to lead our department and serve our community. But even more important, Frank, is your honesty, your integrity, and your compassion for others, which really shine through. The importance of letting your department know you cared about them. And that was evidenced in one of your recommendations. Sometimes I think he cares too much. Other quotes included, "The cops who work for him love him. I would be beyond proud if he was chief where I live. I would feel as though I hit the lottery. He is very special. They'd be very lucky." So thank you for that compassion, that empathy, that care for others. And I warmly welcome you and your family to South Whitehall Township. Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank Steve for being the interim. Being the interim is not an easy job. A lot of times it's a thankless job, but you did a great job keeping the ship afloat, heading in the right direction, and the professionalism you provided. We thank you for that. You could have very easily just, let it go where it went, but you stood up and kept it going the way it has been going and kept it moving forward, and we really appreciate that. I was an interim, it's not easy, and I think you did a great job. Chief Lombardo, or soon to be Chief Lombardo, all I have to say is you set the bar very high, and I will continue to remind you some of the things that you'd mentioned to us and what the expectations are that you provided to us. So we're very excited to have you. I think you're going to do great here. The officers are going to thrive under your leadership. You're going to help them reach new levels within their careers, and interacting with the other chiefs. That township just to the east of us, right, is here, and we appreciate him being here. But building that cooperation between the municipalities is very, very important, as well as the interagency agreements, or whatever you want to say, that everybody works together, as well as the fire and EMS, to make sure everybody gets along. Welcome. It's great to have you. Can't wait to see the great things that are going to come down the road.
Thank you to the board for your comments. Before we call for a vote, I will call for any public comment this evening. Is there anyone present this evening who'd like to address the board on this agenda item? Is there anyone online who'd like to address the board?
Not seeing anything.
Very good. Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt said resolution appointing Frank J.C. Lombardo to the position of Chief of Police for South Whitehall Township?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Chief Lombardo. Chief, did you want to make any comments this evening?
My family might be surprised, but yes, I do have something to say. First of all, I just want to thank the Board of Commissioners and the Township Manager for selecting me to be the next Chief of South Whitehall Township Police Department. It'll be a top priority of the command staff and I to build a relationship of trust and mutual understanding with all of you, because everything we build from this moment forward will be grounded in that relationship as we work together to serve the community. A couple of you mentioned my background and training. My career training and education have taught me that to earn community trust, the police should focus on transparency, public engagement, and fiscal responsibility. And that starts with being responsive to your needs, the community. I feel bad. Who do I look at? From our earliest beginnings, we've derived our authority from the people we serve. In other words, policing by consent. That includes having access to your chief. So please, all of you, email me, give me a call, stop by in the office, because I have an open door policy. Although right now, I don't know where that office is. I don't have a phone, and I'm not sure where my email is. But once I get it, please use it. Come see me. In the coming weeks, I'm going to review my leadership philosophy and expectations with the officers, and importantly, what they can expect from me. You guys need to know who I am, and I'm going to make sure you see that. Once I've done so, then I will share it with all of you, and I want to push it out on the website and on social media so the whole community can see not only what I expect of them, but what you all can expect from me as your chief. To the officers, I'm a cop first and foremost. I spent the majority of my career on the street as an officer, sergeant, and lieutenant. As a firearms instructor and emergency response team leader, I dedicated my career to keep officers safe and will continue to do so as your chief. I met a couple of the ERT guys and tactical people. That's my world. That was my world for a very long time. Because on every shift, we're called to locations we've never been, to interact with people we've never met, to solve problems we didn't create, and make split-second decisions with incomplete information. Throughout my leadership journey, I've always considered the officer alone, on midnights, on a weekend, with backup too far away, who must fend for themselves for those precious moments until backup arrives. As your chief, I will ensure that you have the training, equipment, and staffing to do just that. But keeping officers safe is more than tactics and equipment. As guardians of our community, it's not uncommon for them to be exposed repeatedly to unimaginable situations that over time take their toll. It's a sad irony that in our profession, the same officers who help others every day are unwilling to ask for help themselves. Because every officer deserves to serve their community free from trauma, PTSD, addictions, and other behavioral health issues, which, as you guys know, we're seeing so much of that every day in our profession. Because before you can lead others, you have to lead yourself. For this reason, officer safety and wellness will be a centerpiece of my tenure, and this starts within the police department. In a police suicide prevention project of which I was a part, 96% of the nearly 800 officers we surveyed from all over the East Coast said that their biggest stressor was what happened in the police department, how their leaders treated them. And I'm keenly aware of that. It's no wonder that couple that with the divisive rhetoric concerning policing, it's taken a terrible toll on our ranks. There's no wonder that the IACP, the International Associated Chief of Police, reported in 2024 that 97% of police agencies in the Northeast are struggling right now with recruiting and retention. This is dangerous to our communities and especially dangerous to our officers. In fact, when I met with the command staff last week, they let me know there's only 40 candidates currently on the county-wide recruiting list, and 11 departments have to pull from that. So whatever we can do to help entice people to come into the profession, we will do. And where we'll start is inside the police department. Officers need to know that the leaders care and they have their best interest in mind. I'm committed to ensuring that while we hold our officers to a high standard, as I will myself, they'll be treated fairly, transparently, and with integrity. As your chief, I will put you first, push you to do your best, and back you up when you need most, whether on the street or here at the podium. I want to recognize the amazing support system that's here with me today. We did it. Thank you.
Don't step away. We'd like to take a photo
okay.
with you, please. If the board would please step down.
Picture time.
Oh, okay.
We will continue with our meeting. Thank you for your patience as we took a quick photo with our new police chief. Moving on to agenda item 8B, we have a resolution extending the conditional preliminary final approval granted to a major plan entitled 1429 Eck Road Outdoor Storage. And I'll ask our Director of Community Development, Dave Manhart, to please present.
Thank you. So this is an application to develop the property located at 1429 Eck Road. The plan proposes to construct outdoor storage area with parking. I think there's a guard shack, some buffers, fencing. This application was approved by the Board of Commissioners at the March 20th, 2024 meeting. Conditions in our resolutions have a record the plan within 12-month condition. So they're here requesting an extension. They asked for a 3-month extension. And as we've seen before, the process can take a little longer than anticipated. So we have no objections to the 3-month, but if the board wants to consider something else, that's fine as well. The applicant is here to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Before I open the floor to the applicant, I will ask our township engineer if you have any comments regarding this.
Yes, thank you. Back August 2024, we only had 2 comments left, and one was get your outside agency permits, and the other is sign and record the plans. I believe they had a long process with the district that just wrapped up. I'm taking its thunder, but now they should be ready to go.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Very good.
Yeah, so we'd like to amend our request. Marty, the engineer, talked to the staff, and while he gave me the optimistic answer of I'd like this done in 3 months, which is why I put that in, out of an abundance of caution, we'll amend that to ask for 180 days. And I brought an acceptance of the 180, hoping that that would be accepted.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Open it to the board if there's any comments or questions.
What has to be done yet?
There was so as of August 2024, they had to get their outside agencies, which is their MPDS permit. And then once they get that, they can bring us Mylars that are signed and sealed, and then we record them. I believe, within the last month or a few weeks or so, they just got their MPDS permit.
So, and we go through a subdivision status sheet. So we go through all the conditions. We had a meeting with the applicant last week. Essentially what's left are legal agreements and getting into all the improvements and security agreements. So it's really at a legal point right now. So there's only a handful of conditions left. But we always know that it takes longer than we think.
Yeah, the MPDS ate up a little bit more time.
It is the planning department after all, Chris.
How long did it take you to get that?
How long was that, Marty?
Too long.
Too long. Yeah. It was a little bit more complicated than a straightforward one.
Yes.
For reasons I won't go into because I don't understand them and it will probably bore everyone else. But this was a more difficult one and it just ate up the time. But so we just were sitting till that finished. But that's why he was optimistic we could wrap this up sooner. But rather than come back here because there's a hiccup, we're just going to ask for the.
Are you all right with that extension that you're asking for?
Yeah, we're going to change it to 180.
Okay.
Then I think we'll be fine.
Very good. Any other board comments?
We don't want you coming back every 3 months for a 3-month
Yeah.
extension, but we also don't want this lingering. So I'm okay with 180 days, but at 179, when you come back here and say it's not enough, we're going to say, well, you selected 180.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this, our client will do his best to make sure that we don't use any more of that 6 months than we need. And it would be something completely unexpected that would cause it to go beyond that, right, Marty? I mean, there should be no reason, but can I promise that I won't be? No, but it would be completely unforeseen if we were. So I'll have a good explanation. I won't come in and say, hey, I went on a long vacation, I didn't get around to it. It won't be something like that. It would be something atypical.
Very good.
Okay.
Public comment. Any online? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt said resolution?
Go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thanks for your
Thank you
time.
very
Good
much.
seeing you.
Good luck with your project.
And the room emptied out, so I won't have to go into how I'm a law-abiding citizen of South Whitehall Township myself. So I was a little nervous.
Is there something you're hiding?
No, I just wanted to get some brownie points starting off with the new.
Usually the first ones that admit they're law abiding usually have some grayness.
No,
right,
I'm
let's-
proactive.
Agenda item 8C, we have a resolution granting preliminary final approval to a major plan entitled Allentown Cat Clinic Parking Lot Expansion. And again, I'll ask Dave Manhart, Director of Community Development, to please present.
So this is an application located at 4090 West Tillman Street. The Allentown Cat Clinic is proposing a parking lot expansion, associated stormwater, and some frontage improvements. At the September 12th, 2024 meeting, the Planning Commission recommended preliminary final plan approval subject to 19 conditions. One of the conditions and/or waivers deferrals was related to frontage improvements. There's a PennDOT project that we've heard of, the Tillman Street Interchange Project. There were some things that needed to be clarified with that project as far as extents and improvements in front of the building. So that's kind of what's been taking a little while. We have received updated comments. They're in really good shape, just a few minor things left to do before recording. On the memo, our recommendation is for approval subject to the draft resolution with 21 conditions, and there is one deferral on there for curbing, which is essentially a PennDOT issue, and we're deferring that recommendation to PennDOT.
Very good. Thank you, Dave. Thank you for preparing the memo. It was very comprehensive, very good information for the board to review. Does the board have any comments or questions on this land development plan?
Yes, yeah, it's a little confusing. We have two letters. So we went to the Planning Commission with a letter. The one thing that stuck out was they needed to use a larger fire truck. So they came back in with a plan and we reviewed the turning templates and it works. So that's why we have two letters in there, but it's a parking lot expansion project and exempt from stormwater. So yes, we are fine recommending approval. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Is there any public comment? Anyone online with a comment? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt said resolution granting preliminary final approval to a plan entitled Allentown Cat Clinic Parking Lot Expansion?
Motion.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Then item 8D, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Township of South Whitehall, Lehigh County, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, authorizing the settlement of certain litigation involving the township. I'll ask Township Manager Tom Petrucci to please present.
Thank you. So before you tonight is a resolution that would authorize the township solicitor to execute and file stipulations and orders for the matter of Arlene Gorchov, who is the plaintiff, versus South Whitehall Township et al. On October 17th, 2024, the township was served with a complaint received from Arlene Gorchov, who, as I mentioned, is the plaintiff. In summary, the lawsuit seeks to quiet title as to a strip of allegedly abandoned by South Whitehall Township land adjoining Gorchov's property. It alleges that any claim to the land, which is commonly known as Jewel Street, was forfeited by South Whitehall Township pursuant to the operation of a Pennsylvania statute, which provides that any street, lane, alley that has not been open to or used by the public for 21 years next after the laying out of the same shall be and have no force and effect and shall not be open. The lawsuit also seeks to quiet title and essentially extinguish the right-of-way easements allegedly currently possessed by other adjacent property owners via adverse possession. The lawsuit seeks an order or orders from the court declaring that Gorchov is the owner of the entire portion of Jewel Street, extending from the Gorchov property to the Weir property, and extinguishing any and all easement rights and other property rights that either South Whitehall Township or the individual defendants may have previously possessed. Township Solicitor Joseph Zader has prepared the stipulation and orders as mentioned that provides for the township to exit this lawsuit, confirming the following, that the township is not asserting any ownership interest in the subject property, either in fee or by way of easement, and that all easement rights and other property rights the township may have previously possessed in the subject property have been extinguished or are hereby released and terminated. The resolution was prepared this evening for your consideration to provide for the township solicitor to execute and file the stipulation and seek that the court adopt the proposed order.
Thank you, Tom. Ask Attorney Zader if you have any comments for the board regarding this.
The township manager's summary was spot on. And the only thing I would add is that Township Public Works has confirmed that there are no township utilities or stormwater infrastructure in that area either. So there would be no need for the township to exercise any kind of rights there. And in fact, we have never exercised rights there.
Very good, thank you. Does the board have any comments or
welcome.
questions on this resolution? Is there any public comment? Anyone online with a comment? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt said resolution?
So
Motion.
moved. Second.
Second. Whatever.
2 motions, 2 seconds. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Agenda item 8E, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of South Whitehall Township, Lehigh County, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, authorizing the township manager to file all required applications to transfer all Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection Water Quality Management, WQM, permits currently in the name of South Whitehall Township Authority to South Whitehall Township, authorizing the township manager to file all required applications to transfer all Delaware River Basin Commission approvals currently in the name of South Whitehall Township Authority to South Whitehall Township. And Tom, if you'd please present.
Thank you. So as the board will recall, during the Wednesday, June 5th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting, a resolution was approved by the governing body to remit the Act 537 official plan update to the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. The draft Act 537 official plan followed the required public-to-public wastewater disposal system transfers Act 537 planning requirements checklist. DEP has 6 months to review Act 537 plans, and they took the entire time period. So the board approved the Act 537 plan by way of Resolution 2024-85. DEP then approved the Act 537 plan by way of a notice received on December 17th, 2024. So the next step, as you'll recall, the purpose of this plan update was to transfer the authority's property to the township's property pursuant to ordinance number 1021, which was adopted by the board on May 3rd, 2017. So in the time period since approval was received from DEP, the township engaged in some research in terms of what the next steps would be and identified which permits which would need to be submitted to DEP for their consideration of transferring the water quality management permits from the authority to the township, as well as the Delaware River Water Basin Commission also has some approvals that need to be transferred that are currently named in the authority. So as far as the next steps, we have as I noted, the Act 537 approval. We now have to proceed with the permit transfers for DEP as well as the DRVC. Once we receive those, which we anticipate to take as long as up till May or June, we then are able to file the permit transfers. And then the next step after that would be adopting an omnibus ordinance that would transfer all the assets from the authority to the township. And then we can record finally the certificate of termination with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which would formally terminate the authority of South Whitehall Township.
Thank you. Certainly has been a long road with this project, but it's nice to see that it's finally coming to a close. Thank you for preparing this memo. Does the board have any comments or questions as we take this next step? Does the public have any comment? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt said resolution? Second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 4-1. Agenda item 8F, resolution of the Board of Commissioners of South Whitehall Township, Lehigh County, authorizing the execution and delivery of a master services agreement and a statement of work for professional services from Momentum ECM LLC. Tom, if you would please present.
Okay, thank you. So an appropriation of funds in the total amount of $688,449 for contracted services was appropriated in the 2025 adopted budget, which was approved by way of ordinance number 1093 and resolution number 2024-131. That line item included just over $678,000 to be used towards a proposed scanning project, which is a multi-year project over at least 5 years, we estimate. So prior to the commencement of the scanning project, the Township Administration has determined it is necessary to build and manage a file plan. So in other words, a hierarchical folder structure, standardized naming conventions, metadata schema, and record-keeping rules for the documents captured and or created throughout the previously authorized scanning project. So in other words, before we start scanning any documents, we want to have a methodology by which to ensure that we can easily retrieve files, especially through community development, and make sure that we're maximizing the efficiency of the scanning project. So the overall goal for the project is to eliminate manual work to file, name, organize, and categorize information provided from the scanning project, as well as all ongoing projects from a land development perspective for the township. So we would be creating an efficient document organization hierarchy for the ongoing use of township staff. So put simply, this process will remove individual preferences for filing and archiving, and then create a uniform and standardized automated system that will facilitate an environment for ease of record retrieval. So this also has some succession planning built into it as well. In vetting this process, Township staff spoke to representatives of another municipal entity that recently engaged Momentum ECM LLC, which is Laserfiche, to commence a similar project and verify the process worked as intended. So the resolution before you this evening provided for consideration of adoption of both a master services agreement and a statement of work for professional services from Momentum ECM LLC to build out the file plan as delineated in those documents. So in your packets tonight was a Saldo land development process diagram in order to clearly demonstrate the land development processes that will be captured in the file plan. In addition, the document type worksheet is provided an example of how document formatting will be handled as part of this project. So the master services agreement and executive summary of that is as follows. So develop a Laserfiche-based system to automate document management, approvals, and review workflows, to implement an automated file management to ensure standardized document handling, to utilize forms and workflow automation to improve review efficiency and reduce manual processing, and establish a structured review process to generate necessary documentation for planning commission meetings. So we have a timeline. It's approximately 11 to 13 weeks. So it's, we'll endeavor to stick to that timeline. And the project cost is $25,000 for a fixed price. It's important to note that this is the first phase of the project, and we expect a phase 2, which would help build this out to other departments in the township.
Very good, Tom. Thank you. Do you have a summary of what other departments we may consider in a phase 2?
I think we should consider them all, but we need to first get the hierarchy that is set up. We need to build this out, and then we can look internally before we come to you for another scope of work and another professional services agreement. We can start to try to build that on our own. But I think it would be beneficial to at least vet the possibility, even with police, with finance, and with executive functions as well. And also, now that we have an in-house solicitor, internal legal documents as well.
Excellent. Thank you. The board have comments or questions on this agenda item?
So, Tom, the number you quoted, 685,000, whatever that number, initial number for the project, Did we budget that in this year's budget?
We essentially set aside that entire amount in the budget. So what we did was we recognized it as carryover revenue from previous fiscal years. So that money is usable within the general fund this year. Now, we don't necessarily anticipate spending all that this year.
So the 25,000 will come out of that amount?
It would come out of that amount, and we will not exceed that amount for the life of this project, meaning the over total bucket of the line item. So the intent here is that if we are going to be more efficient with the scanning, that number should come down. So hopefully at the end of this project, I'm coming to you and saying we didn't spend $678,449. We spent a.
So each year you'll carry over money. So let's say you use $100,000 of that money this year. So you'll carry over into the 2026 budget $576,000.
For use, yeah. It's already been recognized as revenue, but yeah, we would carry it over as for whatever's remaining each year in that fiscal year, yes.
So as the project goes on, the carryover will be less and less until the project's done.
Right.
Or you run out of money.
Ideally, what we would do is encumber the funds by way of purchase order so that we can document and track it, which is our requirement under our purchasing policy, so that it's automatically carried over by function of having an approved purchase order.
Okay.
Tom, a comment and a question. First, I want to thank you for spearheading this effort. I know we've discussed the scanning project before. Just for context and for public knowledge as well, the extent of the scanning project would, in reviewing documents, scanning, organizing, would incorporate exactly how many trailers worth of documents?
I'm going to say quite a few. It's quite voluminous, yes. But you know, what is there, 5, I believe?
We have 3 53-foot trailers and also 25 feet long connexes, 2 of them, and then 1 smaller connex.
Yeah, so instead of just blindly scanning those documents, the goal here is to ensure that we're scanning things that we actually need to keep as well. That's why I'm pretty confident once we have this in place, we're not going to be spending that full amount.
Thank you. That answers my question. I think this will certainly be beneficial in the long term, not just for current staff, but for staff down the line as well. The way the township isn't faced with the situation we're currently in with amassing paper records again.
Yeah, and thank you. Yeah, because that's the issue, is that if we just scan again with no hierarchy to this, we're just compounding the problem, which has been exasperated over decades.
Thank you for that information. Any other comments from the board? Public comment on this agenda item? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt said resolution?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Agenda item 9, motions. 9A, we have a motion to approve security reduction number 2 for Crackersport Road Warehouses 2017-104. And again, I'll ask Director of Community Development, Dave Manhart, to present.
Yes, so this is the second security reduction for work that has been completed associated with the Crackersport warehouses. The current release in front of us is for roughly 1.8 million. Remaining in the secured amount would be 1.3 million. And it's also important to note this is a reduction of the bond. There's also cash security, but this is only reduction for that bond. Included in the packet is the engineer's estimate and sign-offs of what's been completed. So I think Tony is here to answer questions, and applicants' representations here as well.
Excellent, thank you. I'll certainly ask Tony again if there's any engineering comments for the board.
No, we went through this very thoroughly. We still have about 1.3, as Dave mentioned, so we feel comfortable with the amount remaining. If anything is remaining to do, we have amount to cover it. So
very good.
We're good with this release.
Very good. Does the board have any comments or questions on the security release? No. Does the public have any questions? Is there anyone online with a question?
do. Brian Height, 1273 Eck Road. I would love to be there in person, but I am home monitoring some pumps at the current time. So my question is everything constructed and operating as designed, especially the aspect of the right-of-way of Eck Road, stormwater controls, topsoil, and placement of trees and all street signage?
All right. There are a few remaining items regarding trees that are still secured. In terms of the stormwater management, I'll go through a brief review of where we are. Is that when this project was reviewed back in 2017, 2018, a report was completed by the applicant's team that estimated how much stormwater is coming to the outstanding properties, the outside adjoining properties. And it also estimated at the end of the project what was going to go there. It was reviewed by the township, it was reviewed by LVPC, and it was reviewed by the state. And it was approved. There was permits issued. Currently, either because of an error or an oversight in what was estimated, or if there was any unforeseen changes to the land by the contractor, there could be changes to the amount of stormwater going to these properties. Regarding the specific property, Brian, there's been discussions with the applicant and this property owner of adding additional inlets and stormwater controls. That's outside of the scope of the work. So I can't comment on the specifics regarding any agreements or anything between the applicant and the property owner, but they are willing to put in additional stormwater controls for the property. So that's the best I can say, Brian.
I appreciate that, Engineer Talarita. I thank the board's opportunity to speak. And finally, I am still looking forward to meeting with the township after last Friday's meeting was postponed by the township. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else online with a public comment? Hearing and seeing no further comments on this agenda item, do I have a motion to approve security reduction number 2 for Crockersport Road Warehouse 2017-104?
I'll second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Agenda item 9B, we have a motion to proceed with capital purchase of South Whitehall Township Police Department 3 Chevy Tahoes. I'll ask Interim Chief Brown to please present.
Thank you. I just let him take a moment, since this is probably my last meeting for a while, to thank you for the opportunity to serve as your interim chief. I've gained some valuable insight into the chief's position, and I look forward to my future career in law enforcement, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. I just didn't want to ruin the moment before, so.
Thank you.
Police department is in the process of fleet upgrades and is requesting authorization to purchase 3 new patrol vehicles in accordance with our current vehicle fleet plan. All 3 will be used to replace the current frontline vehicles. These current vehicles will stay in the fleet and be reassigned to the community relations section and criminal investigations. This is necessary due to the aging fleet of our vehicles that need to be replaced and taken out of sewers due to excessive mileage and safety concerns. These vehicles will align with the department's current fleet plan schedule and will ensure continued efficiency in the supervisor and patrol operations. Whitmore Auto Group was the lowest quote for the 2025 Chevy Tahoes, and they will have them available on their lot in September. So we might be able to get them this year currently, which would be good. The total cost for the upfitting of these vehicles and the vehicle itself with CoStar's pricing is $247,341. These vehicles would be purchased under the budgeted amount designated for the 2025 Capital Reserve Fund for vehicles, which was budgeted for $275,000, so it's under budget. A quick story about the difference between the Ford and the Tahoes. In 2023, we purchased 2 Tahoes. two Fords. They arrived about the same time. Immediately, we were waiting for our video camera, our GTAC systems to come in. And what we noticed was the Ford couldn't sit on the lot for longer than a day without going completely dead. So they went back and forth between the dealership and the outfitter. Both Fords did. The one Ford was able to be rectified. Some kind of a power surge, some kind of draw was making it die. The other one is still having some issues. We're able to use it intermittently. In fact, we just got it back today from the dealer. So that is the reason why we chose to go with the Tahoes again.
Very good. Thank you for the memo and for the explanation on the vehicle purchase. Does the board have any comments or questions?
So I think last year we got 5, because we got 4 in the budget and 1 with the ARPA money. When do you expect those?
I just got word that they are starting them. We're going to have to take some donor cars out there because we have to get the GTAC systems out of the cars to be put in there. So we're going to slowly start taking donor cars out there to for the modification. But it should hopefully be, if not late March, early April, I'm hoping.
That's good. And the gray on here is the ones that you're retiring, sending off the muni bid, or 314, 315, 335, and 345?
No, those were already taken out of service. They are just open numbers. We are taking out the SRO vehicle. That was the oldest one in the fleet. And then, so it would be 333, 334, and 346.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Is there any public comment? Someone online? Very good. If you'd please give
Brian Height. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Brian.
I apologize. Brian Height, 1273 Eck Road. My only question is, at a recent meeting, the board approved a Ford for the Public Works Department. If the Fords are having problems, shouldn't we be transitioning everything to Chevy? Just a question. Thank you.
No, Brian, a base model Ford Explorer for Public Works is completely different than a Ford Explorer Police Interceptor model due to a lot more electronics having to be in the car, where Public Works, we just had one radio, and for strobe lights, they have multiple lights, and that's where the issues are happening electronically.
So the goal is to have Fords and Chevys in the fleet of all township vehicles. Okay, thank you.
Yep, at this time, that's correct.
Thank you. Any other online comments? None. Very good. Do I have a motion to proceed with capital purchase?
Motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Steve. Agenda item 9C, we have a motion authorizing township manager to execute a professional services contract to conduct a professional public opinion poll for the conservation finance feasibility study. I'll ask long-range planner Chris Stroller to please present.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. In November of last year, the board authorized staff to work with the Trust for Public Land, a national organization who works on conservation finance and ballot measures to secure conservation finance for local governments. The board authorized the Trust for Public Land to work on the phase 1 of a feasibility study, looking at what our options could be for the municipality to look into a financing mechanism to support the preservation of open space, as we talked about in the South Whitehall Landscapes Plan. We went through that study. They outlined a number of options that are very appropriate for the use for South Whitehall to consider, and made some recommendations on what kind of mechanisms we can do to look at a public financing option for kind of our needs for open space preservation. The next logical step for this would be to take some of those recommendations, hone in on specifically what some of the details for that would be. For example, if we are looking at potentially a bond initiative, hone in on exactly what that number would be for a bond. If we are looking at a taxing option, hone in on exactly what that taxing would be. We have some great information from the study as to what those impacts could be. But as far as the second phase of this research, we would look at conducting a professional opinion poll that actually starts to poll some of the residents and get some feedback on testing some of those numbers. The goal here is not necessarily for public outreach, but more for determining what the specifics of the appropriate mechanism for financing would be. Once we get that information, we would then use that to draft an ordinance that outlines specifically what the township would be looking at as far as a public funding mechanism, what the parameters of that would be, and all the specific requirements of that, including monitoring of those funds, how we would utilize those funds, and so forth. That ordinance then, we would, once that's finalized, we would conduct a lot of public outreach to the community to get the word out about that in anticipation of whether that's going to be something that's on an upcoming ballot to be voted on by the residents. In addition to that, the benefit of the public polling gives us kind of a good pulse check before going into, say, a ballot measure, because if, say, we're looking at a number that we think might work for what our needs are, but is not well supported by the community, and that ballot measure fails, I believe something like utilization of the earned income tax for public conservation financing, we would not be able to revisit that ballot measure for, I believe, a minimum of 5 years. So it's very important to understand specifically what we're putting ahead before it goes to the ballot. And this is just a continuation of the research that we've already started. The Trust for Public Land works with national polling agencies to conduct this type of work for a number of the projects they work on. They did submit a proposal initially to us back in November to conduct this work as phase 2 for the sum of $20,000, where they would work with a public pollster to do this polling and provide the research and the information to us in order to still meet our deadlines that we laid out for potentially if there's a ballot measure this November. We also reached out to the Muhlenberg College Institute of Public Opinion, who is another nationally recognized polling organization who conducts similar polling to this and is much more local. They provided just an initial ballpark quote for what we're looking at around the same price, around $15,000 to $20,000. So we're requesting a motion this evening to authorize the township manager to work with either of these entities to move forward on the public polling. Again, not in replacement of any public outreach that we would do, but in anticipation of having good information in order to reach out to the public. And if we need to come back with a more detailed scope of work at another meeting, we can do that as well. We're really just requesting the motion to move forward with polling at this point.
Chris, thank you for all this information. Certainly the topic of having a potential revenue stream for open space preservation township is something that our community has discussed for quite some time that I'm aware of. I'm just curious. I know some of our surrounding municipalities have had a similar initiative on their referendums during election season. Did they, do you know if they approached this in that manner where they had an option for EIT and bond, or did they just do a straight EIT?
I believe most of the municipalities that have an EIT in Lehigh County and Northampton County only utilize the EIT, and they have used this in order to build up a fund over time that they then use to purchase small farms and so forth like that. I know specifically for South Whitehall, one of the things that we found appealing with the utilization of both the potential earned income tax increase and the ability to utilize a bond allows us to be a little bit more, I should say, responsive when an opportunity comes along. Oftentimes with the EIT increase, it could take a long time to generate enough revenue in order to actually purchase properties or purchase property rights of a significant value that we see in South Whitehall. Typically, municipalities that I've seen with the earned income tax, they're purchasing smaller easements of a much lower value on some family farms. And unfortunately, we don't have exactly that same type of opportunity here. The properties that we at least see that are currently undeveloped are much larger, and from just general basis understanding of assessment values in property in South Whitehall are much more expensive.
So just a follow-up question. If we were to proceed with this polling, would you have a specific dollar amount ceiling of how much of a bond the township would potentially?
That's something that we would test in the polling, so that we would poll those questions. We would also test some of the questions if we were looking at, say, the earned income tax increase, what would be a palatable number for the residents, understanding of what an increase, level of increase versus the level of revenue generated in order to be the best stewards of the funding and not undercut what we think we should be striving for.
Very good. Thank you. I'll allow the other board members to ask questions.
Yeah, I'll build off of that. First, Chris, I want to thank you for your work on this. You obviously have done a lot of research. You talked to a lot of stakeholders. I am completely supportive of our preservation efforts. For this specific component, though, of the poll, I actually don't think we need to engage in that specific item. I think the residents overall have expressed an interest, having spoken to many of them myself, an interest in programs like this. And I think if we were to proceed with putting this question of an EIT increase on the ballot come November, I think the groundwork has already been laid, in other municipalities, comparable municipalities like Lower Macungie and Whitehall, and even other municipalities like Heidelberg, I think just had one last April. I think, while there are certain issues with polls in terms of random sampling versus the specific number of voters who are most likely to turn out in a municipal election come November, I think the township would be better positioned to begin drafting the language with some of the amounts that we had discussed before. 0.15%, I think, was one of the numbers, which would be the same as other municipalities, and devote more effort to the public education aspect of it, be that from the township or from outside individuals or entities that would want to campaign for this issue and see its adoption. So I think that's probably a better use of township resources. I think the community overall is behind preservation programs. And I think we'd actually be able to sort of skip this step. And even if it, when it comes to the specifics of a ballot question and the amount, right? This past week, I polled the ordinances putting this issue on the ballot from Lower Macungie, Heidelberg, and Whitehall Township, and the language is functionally the same. And if there's a need to sort of workshop specific language or amounts, I think that's something we could certainly do as a board with staff. If that's staff calling staff counterparts in other townships, or even I'd be more than happy to reach out to some of the commissioners I know in Whitehall and Lower Mac. I think we'd be able to do that without adding this additional layer of a poll. So I think, the idea of gauging the community's interest in this is a good one, but I actually think this community is ready to move forward and talk about the language and the specifics and the education aspect of it, which would save you guys some work and time as well. But that's just my opinion. I'm just one member.
So yeah, Chris, I have some thoughts on this too. When I think of polling, I think of phone polling, I think of mail polling, and I think of being at home. And sometimes it's very intrusive to get those polls. And honestly, there's so much spam that I don't even answer the phone. If I don't recognize the number, I don't answer the phone because it mostly is. And same thing with mail. You get junk mail and who has time to take a survey? So that's what I'm worried about too, that it may not be inclusive for the township because you will have people like me who will throw it away. I don't have time for this. I'm not answering the phone. I'm busy doing other things. So for that amount of money, I would much rather it be put towards some type of poll in bills or sent out as a postcard to our residents and gauging the interest that way, or the amount rather that way. And I know that it makes the job harder for you and gives you more work, but I think that you and Dave did a really great job with the landscapes plan, the comp plan, the transportation plan. Those surveys online and surveys sent to the people, I think are much more effective than something that a potentially large percentage of people will toss or not answer. Like Jacob said, there's an interest. How much? That's going to be tough to gauge, but I think if we do teaching in terms of, like you used the example, a latte a month, or a pizza every, so often, just in very concrete terms, go to our events, reach out, do an online survey, do a public survey, however we can, and have that public outreach. I would much rather see that than spend the money to do something that has those potential challenges. But I appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is it's kind of a complicated subject, right? How you're going to fund it. And then you're going to have a pollster from outside the township try to explain it to somebody in a short period of time and then not have any concrete numbers. Well, what do you think you would like to pay? I don't know if we're going to get quality results, because then somebody, oh yeah, that's fine. Okay, fine. And then they realize that's not really what I wanted. So I don't know, because it's a little bit on the complicated side. It took you 5 minutes to explain it basically to us who understand it. Right? Now you do it to a person in the township who doesn't understand it on a cold call. I don't know if the data that we're going to get is going to be something that I could hang my hat on, right? I would much rather do it in a different way, whether it's outreach or in bills or something, but take that money and put it into educating the residents and then getting their feedback directly, where we can hear what they say and we can answer their questions and gauge their feedback. I just rather see us spend that money in a different way to get the information to use for a ballot question.
I would add on to what Chris said. I think obviously we all want this, if it's put on the ballot, we certainly want it to be successful. But the beauty of a referendum that we're able to do in Pennsylvania is ultimately that question rests with the voters, and with the right education, with a whole collection of thoughts and circumstances and factors that the voters take into consideration. Ultimately, they're going to have the final say. So I think if we focus on putting this on the ballot, leaving the question to the voters, if those in the community, whether it's the township or other entities in the community, want to educate the voters on this, I think the best survey where you're going to gauge the township's view on this is going to be that vote in November. And if the townships put in the work ahead of time to educate the residents on this issue, they'll make a choice, an educated choice. We hope that would be in favor of it, but ultimately, I think the best survey is putting that on the ballot. That's just my own personal view.
Well, interesting comments. I wonder, just piggybacking off of some of the discussion tonight, if we were able to get just a little sample of resident feedback, maybe at Earth Day and the Fishing Derby, which is coming up April and early May. Those are pretty well attended events by our residents. Could we put a booth up and just kind of take a straw poll, which would give us a little bit of a sampling?
Certainly, and if I can offer, in looking at, we can certainly kind of go back and look at other options, and probably in anticipation of that, we could potentially prepare an online survey ahead of that, be ready to go, and then maybe distribute it at those events so that we're kind of collecting information before, and then we have something concrete to give instead of just the one-on-one conversation, that we can have kind of that the quantitative data from that at Earth Day and so forth. And thank you for your thoughts and considerations. As we said in the beginning, this is definitely not a required step. It's just an additional step, and we'll certainly look into other options to get the same amount of information, same type of information.
Well, it seems like the EIT part of it is pretty streamlined and standard in what other townships have done. But the question that you're posing is more on the bond side, and what number do we pick? And to Commissioner Peichel's point, if there was an ability to explain to people what that means, as opposed to coming from the staff that they trust, right, at an event, I think that probably would have more ability to help educate so that they could answer that question more intelligently than just a phone call where it's a little bit more removed.
Certainly. I think that the main goal is actually to determine what that specific EIT increase could look like. And I think to Commissioner Hodges' point of having that kind of tangible, here's what that could look like in your daily lives of an increase. Here's what the, is that a coffee a month increase, and are you okay with that? Is that, a pizza a month, and so forth. So that's what we can kind of workshop. And as well, prepare some information as to identifying what the process could be, working with both the earned income tax and potentially a bond, so that there's very clear information for the voter when they're looking at that.
I would add on to that and say, certainly to Chris, you and Dave and all township staff, you are the best communicators on things like this at a number of issues and community events and open houses. Our residents really respond well to you because you're so knowledgeable on the subject. So I certainly have all the confidence in the world that as questions arise, if residents have concerns, if they have questions, you'll be able to explain it rather well.
Chris, I have a question. The EIT by its nature would involve a referendum. You've commented on that. Am I correct in saying that a bond, however, does not go through that, or doesn't have to go through that process? That's something that ultimately the board could decide the amount of the bond. Certainly public feedback is important, but that's ultimately a decision by this board.
That is correct. I believe the intent of sort of the options we were playing around with based on the feasibility study would be, if the board wanted to pursue a bond, could we use some of the funding from the EIT to support the payments of that bond, in addition to using some of that funding for direct purchases? It's just a way of being very wise with the money in order to lower the debt and to still have enough cash on hand. But that is correct, that is not purely just a bond, would not necessarily be a voter referendum.
Thank you.
Chris, if you want to get this on the ballot, when must you do this by?
We were looking at the latest, it would have to be July that the ordinance would need to be passed. And based on kind of our target, we'd be preparing an ordinance for around April and May, and have that hopefully approved by June.
Any other board discussion? Dave?
I just wanted to chime in with regards to some of the differences between polling and online surveys. Polling, they structure the questions to kind of lead in certain directions. So there's science behind it, and that's part of why we reached out to Muhlenberg. I had a contact at the center, and I've gotten a little taste of kind of that science. And so from what it's sounding like is going with that online survey, but I think I would propose that we come back with some sort of engaging either a polling company to help us craft that online survey, so that we get those questions dialed in. Because, I mean, we can write some general questions, but I think there's some specificity that we're looking for out of this. But that's something that we can talk about internally, and we may come back with something like that.
Very good. Thank you. If there are no other Board comments. I'll open it up to any public comment. Yes. Good evening.
Good evening. John Shea at 2911 Huckleberry Road, Allentown. Interesting conversation. Been a salesman all my life. What you have here is a price value situation. So we're talking about a methodology to gather information. I would say that you need to create the value around what you're asking people to pay for. Because once you put in a tax situation, it never goes away. So you have to create the value. So we talked about education. Public education is the most important thing. If you have to have, so it's already the beginning of March, you have to have it ready by July to put it on a ballot in the fall. That doesn't give you very much time to create the value. I think that's the secret. The public has to understand the value to them in order to say, yes, I'm going to pay more taxes for it. Surveys are great. Online surveys are great, but the people that could be most impacted by this are people who may not be in the age bracket where they're going to answer those. And they're the ones that kind of get a tax bill. And they say, oh, crap, where did this come from? So the value proposition is most important. And they could respond to that extremely well. What the polling companies do is they do a cross-section. So if you did an online survey, you get people that are used to answering online surveys. You won't necessarily get a cross-section of the economic folks within the township. So think about that. And when you put together the value proposition, think about it in terms of what that means to everybody, whether they're the highest income bracket or the lowest income bracket, and how that works for them. Just a thought in listening to it. But it's a classic sales situation. I'm going to buy it if I can see the value in it to me. And that becomes a very personal thing rather than, let me put something in the quarterly magazine that goes out or something. It really needs to be a personal approach. Just a thought.
Actually,
Thank you.
I have a question for Dave and Chris based on Mr. Chea's question. It's public data who is most likely to vote in municipal elections. Out of the 21,000 population, there's 5, 6, 7,000 individuals who are most likely to vote in municipal elections. Have you discussed with the polling firms their ability to seek a sample from that population?
Yes.
The way you're getting responses from that cross section of the population within the people most likely to fill out a ballot.
Yes, and I think that's some of engaging some of these professionals is to help us craft those surveys. And, if it's survey 1 is targeted to this population, survey 2 is targeted to this population. And then that allows them to analyze it and look at trends based on those economic factors or age brackets. Some of that can be baked into the survey, but like I said, surveying is a science. And when we went through the How Should We Grow survey, we had a former student at Muhlenberg kind of help us crunch those numbers. So I'm looking to hopefully get something like that out of this, so that we can have better chance of success, so that we can gauge kind of that value proposition. How much is it worth? And we can kind of help figure out how to structure the survey, so that we can get that information out properly and targeting certain likely voters as part of that.
The gentleman who came up here talked about kind of understanding the value, and that's why it's a $20,000 contract. We appreciate kind of the kind words for Dave and I, and certainly we like to think of ourselves as data focused. That's, to your question, Jacob, that's what these entities are very well equipped to do. They have the the data sources they have those databases to access that voter. They have the very statistically valid questions. I've seen some of this through specifically through the Trust for Public Land and other communities. It's a very complex process that they go through, or the pollsters that they're using to go through to understand that. And it's getting that kind of cross-sectional results and weeding out maybe some of the outliers. That is potentially what we're hoping to get out of something like this.
And that largely, motivated my concerns with this, the cost, and just making sure that if we do undertake this effort, that it's targeted, accurate, that we have good response rates, because it's a significant amount of money for a preliminary action. So that's what sort of underlaid my concern.
Yeah, the result would be a statistically valid response of whatever the appropriate cross-section of voters in South Whitehall. And given kind of the testing of the questions, we did give them the information we're looking for. As I mentioned, honing in on the specific tax increase that's palatable. Some of the other components would be what are some accountability measures that we would need to include in the ordinance itself and in the referendum to make sure that the public is comfortable with the way that we're utilizing this money, and honing in on those touch points on specifically, to the gentleman's point earlier, why is it valuable for community dollars to go towards preservation of open space? What is important to the community specifically for that to get them to vote for it in the end? There is a question online.
Very good. Thank you.
Brian Hike, 1273 Eck Road. My only comment is you can poll or whatever, but you need a community champion, and we all remember how the Wares Dam referendum came out. So just keep that in your, like, have your boards, various boards like the EAC and everything, really champion this, because that's how the most successful win. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else online with public comment? Is there anyone else in the audience? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I need a motion to authorize the township manager to execute the professional services contract to conduct a public opinion poll for the conservation finance feasibility study. Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion. Is there a second? We need to vote on this.
Well, we can let it die.
Well, we could. It's an actual motion, so it either needs to be voted on. We can vote it
Or if
down.
there's no second, then it just dies.
Well, can we table it?
Well, we don't have to table it. If you don't vote on it, it just dies and goes away.
Because they're going to be coming back with more information. So
Do we not need to take official action on an agenda item?
Your options are, you've made a motion, so someone has to second, and if they don't second it, then it does fail due to a lack of a second. Or you could table it, but since you did make the motion, someone has to second it.
All right, so I have a second.
If they don't, then it does fail.
I have a motion. Is there a second? So motion fails for lack of a second.
I would make a motion to table this and just to maybe present to the board just some further information from Muhlenberg and the Trust for Public Land. Specifically, if any other municipalities have utilized this, their methodology, just to get some more information, just for my personal assurances. Hoping that doesn't delay us too long, but just to have some more information, because I think with that information, I'd be certainly able to make a decision on this expense.
But I don't think you need to make a motion. I think you just tell the staff, here's what we'd like to see, and then bring forth, craft a second motion with that information that he provided with you, and then we'll go from there.
I think you already made a motion.
Another motion to say, here's what we want you to do.
Failed for lack of a second. So
Jacob, did you just make a motion though?
Yeah, motion to table.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So to clarify, just because I think we're certainly willing to come back with more information, is that more information for the board to consider if we were to get some assistance from one of these agencies to help us with a staff developed poll. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Agenda item 10, correspondence and information. Tom, if you would please present.
Yes, upcoming meetings and events are as follows, with details posted on the Township website. Monday, March 10th, 7 p.m., Parks and Rec Board. Tuesday, March 11th, 6 p.m., Crime Watch. Wednesday, March 12th, 10 a.m. Actually, I'm sorry, that's been changed. Wednesday, March 19th, 10 a.m. to the Civil Service Commission. That came out today. Thursday, March 13th, 7 p.m., Emergency Management Services at the Citronia EMS building. Thursday, March 13th, 7 p.m. is the Planning Commission, and Wednesday, March 19th, 7 p.m. is the Board of Commissioners. Please double check the website for any information about all these website meetings.
Very good. Agenda item 11 is direction discussion. We have a review of the solid waste recycling reports, rate benchmarking study, and South Whitehall Township collection scenario analysis draft. And Tom, if you would present.
Thank you. So as the board will recall, we did conduct an independent analysis of the solid waste and the recycling programs and collection methods in the township. So we can essentially break down the draft study into two components. So we have the rate benchmarking study, and we have the collection scenarios analysis. So I just want to provide a high level of the findings of those two reports to the board. So the survey does show, based on a review of benchmarked communities, that the township does have the highest monthly rate. So we looked at South Whitehall, Whitehall, Lower Macungie Townships, and Emmaus Borough, and Salisbury Township, and Upper Macungie Township. But I want to strongly emphasize that the township program currently provides for 2 toters of trash per weekly collection event as part of the baseline service, and also includes weekly recycling as well. So for some of the benchmark communities, it's an important distinction in the sense that some only allow for 1 toter and some do recycling bi-weekly. The other important aspect to note about this is that South Whitehall Township has built in all contractual increases into its fees to be assessed for the current contract, which runs from January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2028 for the first 5-year period. And then there's 5 one-year options after that, which would have to be between mutual agreement between the hauler and the township. So the best comparative data for the township would be that of Whitehall Township and Lower Macungie Township, as both recently executed new solid waste collection contracts. So Whitehall experienced a significant rate increase similar to the township of nearly 84% under the new contract, with residents now paying $51.25 per month for collection services. And also Lower Macungie's rate is within about 15% of the South Whitehall Township rate, and does not include, to the best of our understanding, the contractual 5% annual increases over the life of the contract. For under the scenarios analysis, summary of the key findings are as follows. So the township's collection routes are highly efficient in servicing a large number of customers, but do exceed industry standards in workday utilization, leading to overtime costs. Current system averages 10 hours per route, exceeding the industry best practice of 8-hour routes. A collection day imbalance exists, with Wednesday requiring significantly more time than other days. The service provider operates at an efficient pace. However, the system would benefit from route balancing and collection process adjustments. The township is experiencing steady housing growth, thereby requiring strategic adjustments to route structures. So there's a couple scenarios that were reviewed. So the scenario 1 is dedicated trash and recycling trucks. So each truck in that scenario would only collect 1 material type, solid waste or recycling. Future growth projections indicate the need for an additional collection day within 10 to 15 years. Balancing collection days is recommended based on 10-year projections. Scenario 2 is limiting trash collections to 1 cart per household. Reducing allowable carts to 1 per household is expected to improve efficiency. There's 2 variations considered. So it's scenario 2A, 3 routes per day for both municipal solid waste and recycling. Scenario 2B would be 2 routes for municipal solid waste and then 1 for recycling per day. So that would lead to minor reductions in total collection hours while providing capacity for future growth. So the key recommendations are to rebalance the collection routes to distribute workload more evenly across the collection week. We'd have to look at that before the next contract, before it goes out to bid. And then to implement a 1 cart limit for municipal solid waste to improve efficiency and reduce hauler costs. Any questions?
So this is just for the future after the 5-year contract is up? That
Yeah.
we have to look for. So right now we're kind of locked into what we're doing with 2 recycling and 2 garbage toters, right?
Yes, the recommendation at this time would be to proceed with the current contract and then to reconfigure the next contract in the specifications.
Yeah, and just so the public is aware, our fee is set for the next 4 years because we factored that in.
Yes.
The others may go up and they may surpass us based on how they staggered theirs.
That is correct.
So Tom, aside from the recommendation to implement a 1 cart limit, there were no other key findings where the township could significantly change to.
Just the rebalancing of the collection routes, like if you dedicate trucks to solid waste and recycling. So that's something we could do a deeper dive in as staff.
Very good.
What about the yard waste? Is that factored into this?
It is not. I'm looking at getting a grant that we would be able to get a study at no cost through this same company that we just did this study with, but we wouldn't have to pay this time.
I think this gave us a lot of insight going forward. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we went down this path. It'll just help us in the future. I think it was well worth conducting the study to get this information.
Yeah, I would agree. And I know when we, back in the early fall of 2023, when we approved the new trash contract, certainly there was concern among the public and concern among us, given the large increase in the cost of trash and recycling disposal, regardless of which of the 3 bidders we would have gone with. So again, Tom, I want to thank you for your proactive work in launching this study almost immediately. I think it sets us up for success come the end of 2028. And also, I think it's been interesting to see as other municipalities have gone through the same thing, seeing increases in the cost of trash, many exceeding the increases we saw in 2023. I think it shows that this is a market-wide problem, not just a South Whitehall Township problem. So I think although we sort of we're hit with the sticker shock first, that certainly we did our due diligence throughout the bidding process. And again, I want to thank you, Tom, and thank staff and for conducting this survey and for bringing them on board. And like I said, I hope it will benefit us in the future, especially, I know you mentioned this, but as we face future growth, that will certainly affect the amount of trash that has to be collected and the optimization of our collection routes. So thank you.
You're welcome and well stated. And yeah, put simply, this study shows that yes, while the costs were a significant increase, there's no significant deficiencies with our current program or the costs that we're paying, which is important to know, and we can adjust accordingly in the future.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you. Then item 12, old business. We have none this evening. Agenda item 13 is Curtis.
I would just, brief discussion items. Commissioner Hodges and I served on the transportation plan. We had a rough review of the plan. I just want to thank Dave and Chris for all of their work, because as they presented the plan, it was very extensive. They put a lot of time into it, and we appreciate, I appreciate it at least. They're going to come back, they're going to tweak it, and then hopefully soon we'll have a plan. But they looked at, I think, every single intersection on every major road we have, and there's a lot of them, and how it's going to fit in and what we can do and what we can't do. And so thank you for your time and effort. That's That was a lot of work. That's got to give you credit.
Thank you. And the consultant we worked with did a great job with that. We do plan on bringing that to the next meeting for direction and discussion to just kind of present the draft. As Chris mentioned, there's still some tweaks we need to make to it, but we're at a point where we can present a draft to the board and then follow that up with adoption soon after that.
Excellent. Thank you for that update, and we look forward to seeing that draft at the next meeting. Agenda item 13 is courtesy of the floor. Again, opportunity for any member of the public to address the board. Good evening. Good evening.
Michael Walk, 29153 Abigail Adams Drive, Millsboro, Delaware. Well, hello, everyone. I have a few thoughts to share with you. I lived in South Whitehall Township for 34 years, and I raised my family here. I now live 3 hours south of here near the Delaware beaches, but I still consider South Whitehall Township to be my home. As most of you know, I served as the South Whitehall Township Commissioner for 3 years, and I regretted leaving the position. When I left in October 2022, I said publicly that South Whitehall had built a strong foundation, was headed in the right direction, and had a positive future. I watched South Whitehall Township closely during the last 3 years. I am very proud of what the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners and the entire South Whitehall Township management has achieved, and you should all be extremely proud of your collective accomplishments. I met President Diane Kelly, Monica Hodges, and Jacob Roth a little over 7 years ago, and I've known Chris Peichel forever. Congratulations on your strong leadership and your combined 10+ years in office. You have presided over the complete, challenging, transformational change that has placed South Whitehall Township in its current strong position. I've worked on a lot of teams in my professional career and my personal life, and I say this with the most sincerity. The best decision I ever made on a team was the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners' decision to hire Tom Petrucci as our township manager and to appoint Herb Bender as our operations manager. Tom, you've fulfilled the promise that we all saw in you. Your leadership and performance has been absolutely outstanding. And Herb, you've been a hallmark of dedication to South Whitehall Township citizens via your steadfast 24/7 work ethic and constant focus on cost reduction. Chris Dickert has installed professional financial management and enabled a balanced budget. And David Manhart, you are bringing our original land preservation vision to fruition by making the Jordan Valley overlay a reality. It's good to see everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Connor. And we thank you for your service, Mike Wolk, on this board. Is there anyone else present this evening that would like to address the board? Is there anyone online? Moving on, I need a motion to authorize payment of invoices and disbursements.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. We have no executive session to schedule this evening. I need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.